Hello and welcome to a highly anticipated weekly MTG by me and probably many of you too. Today, we are going to talk about the Assassin's Creed Universes Beyond Magic set. I am a huge fan of Assassin's Creed. I'm going to try not to gush too much while we do this, and I'm going to let these three fine people who we brought to talk about the set do most of the talking. Hopefully, I'm going to try to restrain myself. But to bring this set to life, we had a ton of fantastic people working on it, both on our team and from Ubisoft. So we have Corey and Lauren from Wizards of the Coast and Aymar from Ubisoft. I'm going to let the three of you talk a little bit here and introduce yourselves and talk about what you did on the set. Let's start with you, Corey.
Hi, I'm Corey Bowen. I was the lead game designer for this set, so I worked on making all the cards and balancing them and developing them and etc. So I basically did a lot of the mechanical game design work here.
All right, Lauren.
Hi, I'm Lauren. I was the lead narrative designer on this set, which sort of is the interim between the game design team and the art director team, and responsible for kind of figuring out who a lot of the characters were going to be, what we were going to depict on the cards, what elements from Assassin's Creed we wanted to bring into this set.
All of them. All of them is correct, right? Yeah? Not quite. Aymar, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm the one representing Ubisoft over here, so worked on the franchise for about 15 years. And my main job was to get sure that we were able to translate the DNA of what is Assassin's Creed into Magic the Gathering and find the right momentum. So mostly it was fun. I was the guardian of the temple, and I just had to say no or yes when you guys were bringing to life amazing things.
Well, and that's a good transition because I'm sure we have a number of Magic fans in the audience who may not be super familiar with the DNA of Assassin's Creed. So, Aymar, give us the 30 to 60-second pitch on what is Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, I'm more used to the 30 to 60 days speech about what is Assassin's Creed, but the super short condensed version is it was a video game franchise, but has expanded way beyond in like comics, books, a movie. But the premise of the whole franchise is based upon history and making history a playground. So the cool things with the game and what they establish is we created that machine, the Animus, that allows anyone to tap into their ancestors or anyone's past and relive this memory. So it's not about time traveling, you can't change what happens, but it's just about exploring history, like embody a character and learn more about your past, about secret thing. So that's a whole super cool concept that we are all attached to because it resonates with everyone. If you like history, if you like the history of whatever your country, your family, you know that there's something, a strong fantasy to tap in.
Yeah. And Lauren, working from that top line, how did the team then look at translating that to Magic?
Definitely, like the enjoyment that people have of history in Assassin's Creed was something that we wanted to bring into the forefront. A lot of it was just in the focus of where we were setting our cards, making sure that the vast majority of them were going to be taking place in the historical context. Like, I am personally a fan of the weird conspiracy theories in Assassin's Creed, but we wanted to keep that kind of the modern elements, a smaller aspect of the set to really give people that opportunity to see all of those different pieces of history and those eras that each of the games explore.
Yeah, but we will see both the historical part of the game as well as modern.
Yeah, I let myself have a little bit as a treat.
All right. Well, we are going to jump right into it. And of course, we're going to start by revealing some of the assassins, including some of the player characters, as well as other key members they meet along the way. So let's start, Aymar, with one of the more popular characters. Tell us a little bit about who Edward Kenway is.
Ooh. So that's an interesting start. Edward Kenway is definitely one of the most popular characters. Like he has his own game, like webtoon series. So Edward is a pirate, and the cool thing with him is, at the time when we were creating the game, we were kind of exploring two different ways of creating an Assassin's Creed game. We were either focusing on a time period, so we're basically building the whole game based on French Revolution, or would take a specific age or a period of time that would pivot like the course of what mankind would be, or we're focusing on an archetype. And Edward was really the first very strong archetype that we had, that was the pirate. So instead of building the whole world around let's say ancient Egypt, we build the whole world around the fantasy of being a pirate. And in order to fit, what we ended up doing was that Edward is not really an assassin for the whole game. You literally find a suit and pose as one and meet the assassin and discover their lore. And toward the end of the game is thinking of, yeah, maybe I should join because those guys are kind of battling and doing the right thing. So that allows us to embrace the whole democracy that the pirates were building, the free thinking, the way they kind of match the philosophy of the assassins. And then it was about pursuing that fantasy, being able to be a pirate, to raid, and to do all the cool stuff that a pirate would do rather than an assassin. So Edward, in that sense, is very, very interesting and is connecting to other characters, but I won't spoil anything yet.
Oh yeah, we'll definitely get to that. But Corey, how so everything that Aymar just laid out, how did you translate that into the card we see in front of us?
Yeah, I mean, so like Aymar was saying, Edward Kenway is like a pretty iconic pirate character. He's doing all the pirate things. He's in the coolest pirate game of all time, in my opinion. So we really wanted to make a character that represented a lot of what pirates are about in Magic. Pirates show up in these colors, blue, black, and red. And we thought it was a good fit for the character as well. And you'll see this card is making treasures for having lots of pirates and assassins and vehicles. And when you crew your vehicles, and they deal damage to your opponents, so you'll be stealing their cards. So in a sense, you're raiding them, you're taking their stuff like a pirate would be. And that's actually a little bit of a departure from what Magic pirates typically are about. We don't actually have a lot of Magic pirates that emphasize the vehicle gameplay, like having ships and boats and stuff like that. But it's such a huge factor in the moment-to-moment gameplay, I think, of Black Flag, that it made a lot of sense to try to have our pirate packages in this set lean a little bit more friendly towards vehicles. So I'm really excited about this card. I think it's a great expression of an iconic pirate.
And Lauren, we've got that memory corridor frame on the right, and fans of the game may get where that is going, but what is that meant to represent? What does that look and feel going for there?
So one of the kind of conceit of the game that Aymar talked about, which is that you are exploring the past through the Animus. This is just a feature that I love about the games, is that the UI that you experience as a player within the game is actually the UI of the Animus that you as a person who is using the machine would be experiencing. And that is also included in the loading screens and the sort of pauses and the spaces in between each of the segments of the story. And so in our memory corridor frame, that's really what we wanted to evoke, is this sort of sense of like you loading in, where you have your character and you have this kind of very abstract background that's sort of representative of the world that they're in, but not necessarily the fully rendered version of it. It also gave us a really cool place to kind of juxtapose with their creature cards, where their sort of main cards are very action heavy. And like, for example, Kenway, he's launching himself onto someone else's boat, and that's really like a cool and exciting, very parkour, very Assassin's Creed feeling thing that you would do in the game, but it doesn't let us like kind of get the cool hero shot. And so that's really what we also wanted to have in our memory corridor frame, so kind of let us get some of the best of both worlds.
Very cool. All right, we have more assassins to get through there. Aymar, how many Assassin's Creed games are there?
In total, we're above like 14, but
Yeah, and there are plenty of assassins for us to get through. Let's move on to the next one. And Aymar, I'm not going to attempt to pronounce this one. I'm going to give this one to you.
I know who we're talking
yeah.
about.
Yeah. So this is Connor, as he's also known. But Aymar, tell us about this character.
Okay, so his Mohawk name is Radanageddon, and is a very, very, very interesting and beloved character too. So the whole story and the whole premise is that he's a descendant in direct lineage from the character we just showed like before, with Edward. So basically, his father, that we'll probably talk about later too, is English, and his mother is Mohawk. So we work with the team in Montreal and with historian, and we wanted to be very respectful of the Mohawk culture. So we reach out and we work with the council of the tribe, and you may not know it, but they are only giving a name once per tradition. So there's only one Radanageddon, and it's the character from the game. So we had to get approval on their side, and we worked on, language, behavior, tradition to get sure that we would be able to craft like a very interesting and unique character and place it in a setting that would be exciting for a North American player across the and people that don't know necessarily that part of history across the globe. And he has a tormented past, and it's a character that is very fun because we played with his personal journey at the same time as we play on the present day narrative side. So while our main character in the prison, Desmond, was having a real hard time with his father, Radon was having exactly the same kind of journey in his personal life that was mimicking what was happening. And it's an aspect that we loved in the franchise, when we're able to play with both what's happening in the present day and what's happening in the past. So yeah, we spent a lot of time crafting quite a unique character, and I think that he really embodies kind of the new modern aspect of Assassin's Creed. And in that game, we spent a lot of time working on a new parkour system and on the wilderness, in order to give him like way more ability to fast travel and to use nature at his advantage. So you really have the feel of being a predator, whether you're in the wilderness or in a big city, as we used to do in Assassin's Creed before.
All right. And Corey, how did you make that translate into the card we see in front of us?
Well, first of all, I'm going to try my best to pronounce this exactly like Aymar pronounced it. Ratanageddon or something. Ratanageddon, maybe.
That's good.
I'm going to say Ratanageddon. Ratanageddon. Okay, you can cut whatever you want to cut from that.
We're leaving it all in, Corey.
Fantastic. Ratanageddon is a very interesting character. I mean, he's a great character. I think that he could have been interpreted in a lot of different ways, color identity wise. He has a lot of different facets to him. He's very well rounded. There's a lot to speak to in terms of his strengths and his weaknesses. I think he's the character that he could have been expressed in different color identities the most out of all the characters that we have here. We chose this color combination mostly as a formula of maybe some other cards related to him that we want to fit into, if he's your commander, I want you to play other cards in his deck. And we chose these mechanics mostly to emphasize some stuff that Ratanageddon was very good at, but we didn't necessarily have a good expression of a unique equipment sort of legendary creature. And you can see he's using all these different types of equipment. I mean, all the assassins do. He's got the axes, he's got the bow. But we thought that in general, this design was a cool take on an equipment magic card where you're trying to bring equipment back from the graveyard. That's not something that you see a lot, and I think it kind of fits well in this color identity. We also have this very interesting evasion on the first line where he can't be blocked and is hexproof as long as he hasn't dealt damage yet. So before his first hit, he's really evasive, really hard to remove. What you'll end up seeing actually is like a lot of our assassins have little different expressions of unique evasion or protection in that kind of sense to try to vary up how our assassins feel elusive or evasive in that way. But overall, I really like the card. I think it plays really well. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, and speaking of being elusive and evasive, Lauren, talk to us about this art and also that extra foil etch treatment there.
Yes. So one of the pieces Aymar mentioned is that this was like the first game. This was also the first game that I played when it was like released. All of the other ones I came to after the fact. Or the earlier games I came to after the fact. So I was very excited. I was like, I can run and jump through trees now. And that felt like a very sort of resonant piece of the gameplay experience in this game to be able to run through the wilderness and really get that sense that you are a larger than life character that can sneak above all of your enemies. So I love how this one turned out. In terms of the foil etched, I believe we have a handful of cards in the set that we wanted to just have this kind of additional, very cool showcase treatment. If you haven't seen foil etched, I find one of them, look at the cards. They're very fun. It's just sort of another expression of another way that you can jazz up your deck. I would also say with the color identity that Corey mentioned, one of the features in Magic is that like blue-black is our pretty classic Assassin's colors. And in a lot of ways, Radon is a very classic Assassin's Creed character. He has all of the abilities and all of the sort of stealth and skill and parkour that you would expect of one, but he has that sort of extra element of the kind of white sense of justice and care and really trying to make the world better, and a lot of morals that he's sort of, I want to say, conflicted with over the course of the game. Like he's trying to figure out what he wants to fight for, and I think that is sort of bringing that third color was an important part of expressing his sort of complexity as a character.
Well, and that's actually a good jumping off point for our next assassin, who is neither black nor blue. Let's take a look at Bayek of Siwa. There we are. All right, Aymar, tell us a bit about Bayek.
Bayek is a very, very, very interesting character that is close to my heart because it came with kind of the second phase of game for Assassin's Creed. We can say that we have the classical ages where the main protagonist was Desmond. So we're talking about Assassin's Creed 1, 2, Brotherhood, Revelation, 3, 4. And then with the arrival of a new generation of console and more, basically more horsepower, we tackled down a new approach to the way we were making Assassin's Creed game. And instead of usually focusing on one big city or a couple of big cities with a hub, we decided to work on a whole country. So the idea was to recreate the kingdom of ancient Egypt. And that was a massive task that took us a lot of time. And we kind of saw like Origins at the second phase of the Assassin's Creed game that included more RPG element, bigger, broader world that, you know, follows up with Odyssey and Valhalla later on. So that one was kind of a reboot of the franchise in a way for us in the way we were designing things. So to get sure that we were close to our roots, what we decided to do was to get really, really, really back in time, and we're talking antiquity, like 49 before our era. And we wanted to express the origins and the name of a lot of modern day element that people know from the Brotherhood. So we know basically in our lore that the assassins existed for a very, very, very long time. But we question ourselves about like where are some of the elements coming from, and hence that characters will allow us to showcase some of the elements. So why are the assassins at some point in their history cutting down one of their finger? the use of the white element and the red sash, the logo of the assassin that is in fact the shape of an eagle skull that you would put on the sand, and it would give you that kind of symbol. So he has to embody what is at core like the assassin that everyone thinks about. And then the whole idea was also not to get back to once again retell the story or the journey of somebody joining the assassins and discovering the Brotherhood, but instead kind of building the Brotherhood. So Bayek is a very different character in the sense of we're not starting the journey with Bayek being all happy and suddenly something happening. We're starting the journey in action with Bayek already having a target and getting to closing the deal and killing that guy. At the same time, you see him like basically marking his arm, and you see that he has a whole list, kind of Kill Bill style, where he's already in action. So you basically have a couple of flashbacks and discover like the tragedy and the death of the character. So for us, it was interesting from a narrative standpoint to have something that was darker and more mature than what we used to deal with. We're talking about the loss of a child, the impact that it can have on your life, and the way Bayek will evolve before kind of becoming the first hidden one and deciding to vanish from history. So he's a very, very unique and important character for all fans, because he is at the starting point of what is Assassin's Creed today.
Now, Corey, one of my favorite things about this set is how we've taken magic mechanics and they just make sense. Haystack, which we revealed at the first look, was one of those, but disguise on Bayek strikes me much the same. How did you find that fit?
Yeah, I think there's actually a good amount to unpack here with this card design. Certainly, disguise makes a lot of sense here. MKM Murders at Markov Manor debut disguise is a morph variant with Ward 2. And we thought that morph in general was, it's difficult to make a whole set around morph, but because this set doesn't have a draft environment and is really focused on the card by card individual flavor and charm, we thought that sprinkling some disguise into certain assassins when they could fit or felt particularly flavorful was a really cool idea to do. So here we see Bayek with disguise, a pull forward from MKM. And it's a good example of another expression of that kind of stealthy, elusiveness that we see throughout the assassins. You also notice that Bayek cares about historic stuff. As Aymar mentioned earlier, like playground through history, like playing through history. History is such a huge pillar of this franchise. And so we use the historic synergies, this historic mechanic in general a lot here. In general, assassins do lean black, blue and black mostly, but we want to make sure we can make cards of other colors. And we feel Bayek is a very red-white character. White, he builds his organization, and red, a lot of his drive is through passion or vengeance in a sense. But it's hard to make legendary assassins that care about assassins in non-black colors, because assassins historically are a very black color pair. So when we're making a Bayek like this, we think that historic creatures, basically being a fancier way to say legendary creatures, is a really good hook for synergy for Bayek, for him to still feel like he's the leader of something, and he can lead a deck with other assassins and kind of legendary characters from this set, but not necessarily constrain you to finding a bunch of only red and white assassins, because that is difficult to do in the greater Magic atmosphere.
And Lauren, eagle-eyed fans who are watching, and that pun was intended, may notice something. Yeah. Thank you. May notice something in the background of Bayek's art. What is that?
So first of all, I love Bayek. His story, I think, was such a phenomenal one, and part of that was what you may notice in the back of the card is Aya, who is his wife, or I guess former wife. They're still technically married, but separated, and it is their child that they lose in the early aspect of the game. It's a very minor spoiler for like the first 15 minutes. And this is very much the story of both of their grief and how that manifests and how it looks really different for the two of them. Bayek, I think, still retains a lot of his sort of obligations, his feelings of obligations towards Egypt as a Medjai, whereas Aya has sort of shakes off a lot of that sense and really dives into being an assassin and the sort of right hand of Cleopatra. And so I really wanted in their cards to have that sense of the two of them, because I think even though a lot of the game you're not necessarily seeing both of them together, they're sort of omnipresent in each other's lives. And so we have Aya in the background of this card, and when we eventually see Aya's card, you probably notice that Bayek is also in the background of that card. And just the flavor text, just take a look at it. I particularly enjoy what we did with these two cards to really feel like they are separate characters, but also still very connected.
Yeah, and we are not revealing her on this stream. You'll have to pay attention to
you
the
get to
rest
look
of
forward to that.
for that. Yeah.
Hold on to that
now
ellipsis.
I know it's I like that we're showing this one first because it is the first half of the sentence.
Yeah.
Now there aren't just rare assassins in this. We do have a suite of uncommon assassins. Let's meet our first one, Lydia Fry. So, Aymar, who is Lydia Fry?
I was super surprised to see that we were using Lydia in the card set, but it makes so much more sense. And because my main deck is always black and blue, I'm super happy because Lydia is an amazing card from a design standpoint. So as a character, she's basically a descendant of the Fry family, so Jacob and Avi, but are the main protagonist of Assassin's Creed Syndicate, a game that was based in London during the Industrial Revolution. So it was very cool because it's one of those characters that you play as part of the game in kind of time anomaly in order to give you more glimpse of the impact and what would happen later on in history. So she is really in London during the bombing, during the war, and you have very specific mission with her, but she's absolutely everything you would expect and love from a traditional assassin. And yeah, that's kind of the character in a nutshell.
All right, and Corey, this looks more traditionally black-blue for an assassin.
Yeah, I mean, this is a pretty straightforward, it's an assassin's assassin. This is an assassin for assassins. As Aymar was alluding to, they play more of a minor character compared to a lot of the protagonist assassins that we show off a lot in this set. And we'll see a lot of those lower profile assassins at Uncommon because we really do try to cast a wide net on bringing a bunch of cool characters into the card set. But yeah, she's an assassin. She does the things. She has a quirky evasion ability. She surveils, scaling on your assassins. She does it all,
All right. We're going to move on to the next uncommon assassin that we're revealing today because I want to get to... We've got so many more preview cards to get to. We're going to keep moving along. We're going to meet Adewale, Breaker of Chains. Aymar, tell us about Adewale.
So Adewale is a character that is also features in Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. So is a character that you will see with Edward, and is going to be the only other captain of the Jackdaw. So basically the main ship that you have that you can upgrade and play with in Assassin's Creed 4. And he also had his very own adventure in the form of the DLC Freedom Cry. So Adewale was super important from a narrative standpoint because he is literally an African character during the time of piracy, and it allows us to deal with heavy subject such as slavery and his personal story, and the way it turns out to be independent, free, and allied himself with the assassins. So for us, it was important to spend a lot of time getting sure that we were writing the characters appropriately, at the same time giving a light on the way pirates were behaving themselves and how it allowed like some people to rise above everyone else. And Adewale is a brute force in the game in every sense of the way. Is physically super gifted, is got like tremendous weapon that none other assassins is using, and at the same time is super wise, as an amazing character, and will end up being a memorable captain for the Jackdaw.
Now, Corey, this card looks like it is built to basically hang out with Edward Kenway. Is that what you had in mind when designing this card?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, he's both a supporting character for Edward, and then he goes on to, lead his own stuff. But we build a lot of the sets in terms of having clusters of synergy, trying to connect characters that you would want to be connected to each other. And as I was talking about earlier, we're leaning the pirates a little bit more towards vehicles. The Assassin Pirate Vehicle batch is a similar batch that we saw in Edward himself. And so Adewale is kind of designed to be a really powerful piece in a deck that might care about pirates and vehicles. And he's a 4/1, showing off his combat prowess, but also being a quite good stat line to crew vehicles mechanically in Magic. So we're kind of using this slot to support that cluster of synergies. They're not archetypes. I think they're more like clusters in this set, but it's a cluster of pirate and vehicle stuff.
Very cool. All right, we're going to move on to one of, if not the more popular characters in the set. So we've already seen a version of Ezio before, but here we see another version at an earlier stage in his life. This is Ezio Brash Novice. So tell us, Aymar, a bit about Ezio at this stage in his life.
Ezio is probably like the most famous and one of the most beloved characters of the whole franchise. He was a risky character to develop because we were basically building upon the success of Assassin's Creed 1 and on Altair, and the game was a massive hit, and everyone was expecting, as with many other video game franchises, to continue the journey or the story of your main character, but we dropped everything, changed the time period, get into something that was kind of untapped territory for an action adventure game like the Italian Renaissance, and having that character that was living La Dolce Vita, especially here in that version as Ezio Brash Novice. So he's a young Italian noble coming from a Firenze family, and he's just enjoying life with brother, having fun, being a womanizer, being cocky. And suddenly drama hits his family in the form of meeting the Borgia. And he discovered that his father was part of a secret cult, the Assassins. In those different games, Ezio changed a lot. He is starting as a young noble, being like Brash, the novice that he is, and then he'll become wiser. He'll become a master assassin. He'll rebuild a brotherhood and being the mentor of everyone. And he'll ended up his life being, bitter and looking at the assassins and the cult with another eye. And I think that going from his young age to the age of delusion and everything in between, falling in love, losing things, losing friends, is something that resonates with a lot of people, because you'll be an Ezio at a specific age of your life. So we spent time like crafting his personal story, and the whole Assassin franchise evolved with him. So is definitely one of the key characters, if not the one that is featured the most whenever we're talking about Assassin's Creed. And that version of the card is, in fact, focusing on Ezio being young and cocky.
Yeah, and Lauren, given everything Aymar just said, how important was it to get multiple versions of Ezio at different stages in his life in the set?
It was definitely one of our early priorities. I think it was a combination of both the popularity of the character, but also just the growth and change that he experiences. Like Aymar was saying, he's kind of the only one that you see at multiple points throughout his life, and being able to... So Magic, we have individual cards, and they tend to be very static. We're going to show you a single snapshot in time, this character in this place. And with Legends in particular, when we can show multiple versions of the card, that's kind of how we can convey how they change, who they become. So even Ezio's color identity changing, his creature types changing, and the art changing really shows us this whole thing. I think in particular, one of the things I like about the Brash Novice card is that the flavor text is actually a quote from, I believe, the final game, Revelations, that's sort of him reflecting back on his life. And it's sort of this very hubris moment where it's like, oh yeah, you're seeing him in the art being his very young self, and then sort of recollecting like the kind of full journey in a single image. And so big shout out to the editors for getting that full quote on the card. It was a little touch and go at a couple points. They're like, I don't know if this fits. And I'm like, it's really important. Please make it fit. So our editors are amazing, and so are our typesetters, and I love them dearly. But yeah, that was definitely a feature we wanted to show on this card.
Yeah. Well, and Ezio is so popular and so woven into Assassin's Creed that our next card is Brotherhood Headquarters. This one actually depicts, Lauren, Ezio's home.
Yeah, so for Montegiorni, I probably pronounced that horribly wrong, but close enough. It was kind of notable in that it was like you were rebuilding it over the course of the game. You were investing in it. Like that was the whole reason you were like buying up shops in Venice. And so featuring that, I think, is kind of the first like very iconic headquarters, and also one of the few that sort of served as its own location over the course of multiple games, seemed like the correct choice. Also, it just looks really cool. Like, who doesn't love a villa in Italy?
Who doesn't? Now, one of my favorite things about both this set and the Assassin's Creed games as a whole are a lot of the relationships that we get to play around in. And we're going to see, this is maybe my favorite relationship in the entire series. We're going to see the cards for Eivor and Sigurd. So first of all, we're going to meet Eivor, Wolf-Kissed. Aymar, tell us about Eivor and Sigurd as well when we'll get to him in a sec.
So yeah, Eivor is the main character of the game Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and once again, it's a game where we start the approach with the archetype rather than the typical time period. So what we decided was, okay, we had the pirate, we want to play with the Viking, and how to conciliate being a Viking and being an assassin, because there are so many things that don't necessarily match. Like you shouldn't, in the tenets, meaning literally the creed of the assassins, there are different rules. You shouldn't compromise the brotherhood, you shouldn't spill the blood of innocents, which is not very compatible with raiding and what we think when we're thinking Vikings. So we had to play around that idea, and we set in a time period where, once again, Eivor is not going to be a real assassin from the get-go. She's going to meet some assassins, she's going to be trained by them, use their method, and ultimately, I won't spoil the whole thing, but we're gonna get closer. But Eivor is a very specific character in the sense of she's not purely what we would qualify as human. She is part of like our meta lore in a really weird way. So long story short, she's kind of a god amongst like humans. She had like with extrasensorial abilities, and she'll be the lead character of the game. In the game, you'll have the opportunity to choose like different version of Eivor. We are going with the canonical version where Eivor is a female and she is embodying Odin, hence the crow and everything around her and all the mythical aspect. So she is not only super smart, she's super strong. She's going to be basically taking the lead, and her brother Sigurd is also a very specific and unique character. He is at the start of the game the Jarl of Rathenthorpe, that is their camp. But he'll be busy chasing Chimera and trying to build a legion while you'll do the heavy lifting. And at some point, of course, there's going to be a clash and there's going to be an issue in between like Sigurd and yourself. I won't spoil the whole game for people that want to play the game because it's not that old. But there's a very interesting relationship between both of them. They'll basically start as brother in arms and they'll build something together, and they'll reach a point where they'll argue about like whose place and whose role is the most important in that community. But that's one of the new and very important aspects of Valhalla, the fact that you're not only fighting for yourself, you're not only trying to build your legend, but you're torn apart in between trying to accomplish memorable things and at the same time taking care of your whole community and building upon them. And that's why those characters are working well together, but also will clash at some point.
Yeah, and Corey, I absolutely love putting these cards together because they both play on sagas, but you've also got Sigurd, who's got the boast ability, which is so perfect for that character. Talk about designing these two cards together.
Yeah, I mean, we thinking about Vikings, we pulled together Boast, which is a mechanic from our Norse mythology inspired magic sets, but also sagas, which is a good expression of stories. We're trying to play up the Viking nature of like getting into battle and then going and telling a lot of stories or bragging about it or making history and making that something to be known. So we do a lot of saga synergy with these two characters. We share a color identity here to draw a connection with them. As Aymar referenced with Odin, maybe there's another character with this color identity that will also share a relationship with Eivor, but that is to be seen. Overall, I'm really excited about these cards. I think the Saga synergy is super fun. Fun fact, we actually had these designs reversed for a while. That they were on each other's cards for a while until we ended up, realizing that they made a lot of sense to switch and have Eivor being the more powerful, stronger static character, and Sigurd being more of the boasting community leader type thing.
Very cool. All right. Now, earlier in the show, we talked a bit about the one of the big appeals of Assassin's Creed is getting to play in the history, and that is a weird space for Magic sometimes. Now we've already met a couple historical figures in Cleopatra and Leonardo da Vinci that we revealed at the first look. Today we are going to reveal another one, which also comes serialized. So let's meet Socrates. And Lauren, why don't you tell us a little bit about that push and pull about putting real historical characters in a Magic set?
Yeah, it's definitely a relatively new space for Magic to explore, something that we've only started doing with Universes Beyond, because we are a fantasy property, and so most of our sets everything is made up, none of it is real, and so that is a particularly interesting thing when approaching very real aspects of history. I think a lot of Assassin's Creed, you're kind of getting to spend time in history, but meeting a historical figure kind of really grounds you in like what happened in our past. And a lot of human history is very fraught, and a lot of really not great things have happened. And so in selecting characters, we wanted both a range across games. So Cleopatra and Socrates here being from our kind of the more recent games versus Leonardo da Vinci being from one of the older games, but also largely leaning into what I'd say are more allies to the main characters. I think Cleopatra is sort of our exception, where she starts as an ally and then things change over the course of the game, as a slight spoiler. But really sort of finding people who are more supportive to the assassins characters than necessarily antagonistic to them, in part because a lot of the antagonistic characters also represent very fraught characters in our present day and our very real history. And the other important piece was really leaning on all of the work that Ubisoft has already done to express these characters. Like the versions that we're showcasing are not our interpretations, but are the interpretations present in the games, and really leaning on all of the work that they've done in the games for how they wanted to portray these characters, showcase them, what their personalities are within the game, to sort of still tie it to the fantasy setting of Assassin's Creed.
Now, Corey, the philosophy major in me is just tickled pink to see Socratic dialogue on a Magic card. But talk a little bit about how you ended up on this design for Socrates.
I think Socrates was a really tough one to design. It's like, I want to design a card that's just like not about combat at all. By the way, this is a combat game. You need to be dealing damage. I want a card that you play and you're like, okay, the goal of this card is that I start to get into like a discussion, a debate, a philosophical discussion with someone. So we really try to make an ability here that made you be like, hold on. If you're attacking that guy, this is what I'm doing. Or you can attack me and we can draw a card. Or it's like, I want this card to spark some like literal discussion in the table, and I'm imagining this mostly for Commander for what it's worth, because it is quite a political card, which really leans towards the Socratic dialogue stuff. But I think we did a great job here. I think it's a super fun card, and it's gonna. I think it's gonna accomplish goal. I think people are gonna sit at the table and be like, "Hey, here's the deal. If you do this, I can do this." Blah blah blah.
I'm certainly going to try that out. But I also want to move on to the Templars. We've spent a lot of time talking about the protagonists and the good guys, but this set has the Templars as well. So we met the Magic version of Edward Kenway earlier, but Aymar, the Kenway family tree has many branches and plays a major role in Assassin's Creed. So let's meet another Kenway, and Aymar, tell us about Haytham and the whole Kenway family tree.
Yeah, the starting point with designing Haytham and going there was that at some point we wanted to make a counterpart to what we've been explaining, talking about, showcasing with the assassins, because we have introduced them as you said, being the good guy, being the protagonist, but sometimes being the protagonist doesn't mean you're the good guy. You're the focus point of the whole story, but it could be more complicated than that, and that's what we wanted to illustrate. We wanted to showcase that there was a layer of death, and that you were not playing some good guys against some bad guys, but it was more about fighting philosophies. And the assassins embodied free will, while the Templar are more about control and order. And in that sense, when we introduce Haytham Kenway, we literally showcase him as using Assassin's method before revealing that he is a Templar, so the opposite faction of the Assassins. But the way they operate at the time is, if you look at the Templar during the Great Exploration and the conquest of the New World, the Templar were formerly strongly fighting against slavery. They don't have like the position of being the bad guy systematically all the time. They think that mankind should be in control, should be under the control of people that are more skillful and competent, and they feel that they are with people. So Haytham is really that kind of character. He's like in the figure of the dead and and when Radon is basically full of fury and will, and wants to fight for people to be able to basically determine whatever they want to be able to do with their life. You have somebody over playing the puppet master, and it is that. So the conflict ultimately will reach a point where it's going to be pretty bloody between both of them. It's thank God it doesn't always end up that way. But I think that it was an interesting character because it was also a surprise character. When we talked about Assassin's Creed 3, what we were showcasing was always Connor as being the hero. And suddenly you start the game and you end up playing as Haytham. And it drove some of the people and some of the player nuts. They're like, I want the assassin. And some over like gets it. It was like, okay, it's going to be a slow burn. It's going to be a long story. It's going to be complicated. But I'll have the opportunity to expose my opponent behavior, way of thinking, and it makes everything more interesting because you're not facing like a Disney type of character where everything is black and everything is white and it's not complicated and you're fighting against pure evil. Here's like there's death and there's reason why and motivation why the character is doing things. So I think that exposing Haytham that way is really interesting. And what we've noticed is the younger you are, the closer you are usually to the assassin. You're kind of an anarchist. You want to, destroy everything. And the older you get, the bitter you get, the more nihilist you get, the closer you get to the Templar. You're like, well, right. Well, let's go with Haytham.
Yeah, I still very vividly remember that reveal in the game where you were playing and you thought you were an assassin, and then it turns out you're a Templar, and it just kind of shifted the whole thing. But I also want to look at our next card because I think this is a really cool way to display the Templars in this set. So this is Templar Knights, or Knight, although Knights, it's definitely going to be plural when you're playing it. So it's got that line at the bottom, Corey. A deck can have any number of cards named Templar Knight. How did you land there?
Yeah, the Templar, it's very interesting. Our early design exploration of this IP kind of formed this idea that the Assassin Brotherhood leaned black-red as a protagonist, and the Templar Knights would lean blue-white as the antagonist, which is a very unique setup for a typical story because, typically the black and the white are reversed in that sense. As we kept developing the set, we found that there was more appetite to make a lot of different assassins, a lot of different assassins characters, and there was less appetite to make so many Templars. But Templars are a big part of the game. They're primary antagonists. They're always showing up. So one of the things we wanted to do was to make a representation of just like a Templar that could, it's a single card, a single slot in the set, but it could, represent many, many Templars, many minions, peons, knights in general, which this is. Also, this kind of idea of this is kind of referred to as a relentless mechanic in Magic. The idea that you can have any number of this type of card in your deck. We thought that from just a pure Magic mechanical standpoint, I really wanted to make a white one. It feels like white should be a color that has a lot of these small creatures, and it doesn't really have a nice relentless card. So we thought making a Templar Knight that you can have any number of to represent like a limitless amount of Templar Knights made a lot of sense. And if you look at this ability here, it's searching for legendary artifacts that kind of represents, the end goal of, both the protagonist and antagonist here is the search for these mythical artifacts, these MacGuffins throughout the Assassin's Creed games that are kind of the vehicle of getting that control and that power on either side of the conflict. So here it is. Templar Knight represents a bunch of Templars, searches for what I'm going to affectionately refer to again as MacGuffins. It's a white card. I'm going to make a deck with like 30 of these, I think.
30 is the right number.
Mm-hmm. Here first.
All right. Well, the Assassin's Creed games aren't all about the past. As Lauren said earlier, we give you some of the modern day stuff as a little treat. So we're going to move on to the treat section of the show, I guess. Let's take a look at I don't know if you want to call them the big bad or just how Aymar, how would you describe Abstergo Entertainment?
Yeah, it's the upfront of the Templar order in the modern day. So instead of being as public as they were at some point in history before being hand down and burned to the last one, that's what like history retains at least. The Templars has been acting a bit more like the assassins, so they're undercover agent, and they're using a huge conglomerate, the Abstergo company, as something to hide their operation and to leverage like huge funding, and at the same time doing some research. And the fun thing is we created many different branches. So you have Abstergo Industries, and that one is Abstergo Entertainment. So it's the entertainment franchises side of the whole thing. And their main headquarters was in Montreal as the Assassin's Creed main studio. And there was a lot of joke and references in Assassin's Creed 4 about like Ubisoft. So a lot of my colleagues, a lot of the stuff that you can hear are in fact coming from, well, the frustration of developers. So we use that as an occasion to vent out. So there's plenty of funny things in it, and it's so cool to see it in a card.
That's really funny. So we also have some modern day assassins as well. We have opinions are split on these two characters, but they definitely go hand in hand.
I think it's just mine and Blake's opinion.
just Lauren's opinion and my opinion of Sean. Not producer Sean, but Sean and Rebecca, agents. Lauren, I'm gonna give you the joy here of talking a bit about who Sean and Rebecca are.
So there are a number of like the modern day characters, and Sean and Rebecca, they really are a pair. They literally, I think, are married at this point in the story. And they are recurring characters that show up as sort of your allies. They're your tech support. They're the ones who kind of help Desmond initially in the Animus. I enjoy a good pun. I enjoy a good sort of. I don't know how to fully describe Sean, but I just found him a delightfully charming character, and the counterpart of Rebecca, who is very no nonsense, but also just incredibly talented, smart, technologically proficient. And the two of them really kind of help you out throughout the course of the game. So they felt very important to represent as kind of your allies and your support within the game itself.
Yeah, I mean, Sean always helps you out. He's just always got attitude about it. Just always attitude.
No, he's just gently ribbing you. It's a very British thing.
That's true. That's true.
He shows his affection through meanness.
Now we might have noticed that Sean and Rebecca referenced directly the Animus, which is very fitting. So let's see the Animus there with Sean and Rebecca. So Corey, talk a little bit about design. I mean, the Animus is so central to this game as a mechanism for how everything works. So there had to be a lot of pressure, maybe is the right word, to get the Animus right.
Yeah, I mean, it's the conceit of every game, right? Is you're stepping into this machine that lets you relive these memories, and Sean and Rebecca, like in many of the games, are literally the people running this thing and helping you out while you're in it. So it felt really on point for them to basically get this thing and come back. But yeah, the Animus has to be correct. It has to be what it's doing. But I think we came up with a pretty literal interpretation. You're collecting memories of lost legends, and then you are, for a moment, becoming those legends. It's very, very straightforward. And I think Sean and Rebecca like tutor for the Animus in a sense. It's not the only legend in the set that's going to interact with this card, which is exciting.
All right, and then finally, at least for our previews today, in the modern era, we do have Layla Hassan, who has become very important to the current storyline. So, Aymar, tell us about Layla and her journey.
Yeah, Layla is kind of the spiritual successor to Desmond. That was the main character we used to craft the story on the very first Assassin's Creed game. We reached a point where we were hesitating in between adding new characters or not adding new characters for the present day layer. And the reason is purely about design. It's about the fact that we're asking you to play someone in the present day that is not you, but is using a machine to play someone else in another template. So it was a lot of layer. So we had to find like a right and proper balance and be able to tell a story that is compelling in the present day and that would resonate with what's happening in the past. So Layla is kind of the reboot new character that we're using in order to do so. She's the first character and that will welcome all of the newcomers into the franchise and that would carry the weight of advancing the meta story and the lore. And she is like a super, super interesting character where Desmond was a bartender that was mainly interesting because of his DNA and his legacy. Layla is super interesting because of who she is. The way she acts, she is like a super genius. She is passionate by history. She's got tons of skill. She exactly knows what she's doing. She's super strong. And she's using kind of a really weird prototype machine that looks like a sarcophagus, and that was the whole idea of lying down. but she's basically using a new tech that allows her to tap into somebody's memory without being directly connected, without that person being an ancestor. So she's able to relive like multiple memories, and she'll have to face like really weird thing when you're gonna play with her. You're gonna be facing like some of the craziest stuff that happened in the franchise. But I think that she's exactly the kind of lead character that we want in our games, like the perfect mix of weirdness, geekiness, strength, knowledge. So that's who Layla is.
Speaking of all the weird things that happen to the characters, we haven't yet touched on some of those legendary artifacts that the Templar assassins are referring to. So the Izu relics, or as a lot of people know them, the pieces of Eden. So our first piece of Eden is actually one that was recently in game terms held by Layla, which is Caduceus Staff of Hermes. So what is this? First of all, talk about Aymar, the role of these sort of legendary pieces in the game, and then more specifically about this one.
Yeah, it's quite the complicated aspect and complicated part. Like at the beginning, most of the pieces of Eden were basically MacGuffin. They are here to advance the narrative in the game, and they were kind of like game changer, mystical things that you don't really know how they work, or you know that they're super powerful, and it helps us like focus the story at some point. But the idea is that all of these artifacts are coming from an ancient civilization that has now vanished, and the Templars and the Assassins are aware of their existence. And they basically fighting into the shadow in order to gain advantage or take them. With the Templars, it's quite obvious what they are doing. They are literally using them in order to have more control on population, on the world, and do some research. That's how they were able to advance tech and to create the Animus and lots of other things. The Assassins are more acting as protector. They want to get sure that this artifact that causes the doom of a civilization will not fall upon the wrong hands. So most of the time they are hiding them, they are protecting them, they are sewn to protect them. And the Caduceus is one of the most powerful artifacts in the franchise that can turn you into somehow someone completely mortal. So that's why people are fighting against, like in order to get control of that super powerful piece of Eden.
Yeah, and yesterday, I say that we haven't said this. We pre-recorded this, so when I say yesterday, I mean yesterday for you, the viewers at home, not yesterday for those of us who are recording this. But yesterday, Ubisoft actually revealed the I'll say the original piece of Eden, so the Apple of Eden, Isu relic. There it is. You may have already seen that. But this whole legendary artifacts thing. So we also included some reprints. Corey, tell us a little bit about the Sword of Light and Shadow and the Sword of Feast and Famine that we've also included in the set and what they're meant to represent.
Yeah, so the swords for the reprints. This has a few reprints. A lot of the reprints are going to be cards that we thought fit really well, and cards that we thought were really exciting to include in this kind of set. For the swords, we looking at different equipment reprints. We just wanted to find some exciting equipment to represent a lot of different weapons throughout the franchise. More specifically on these weapons, I think that's more of a Lauren call. I didn't top line these, but we were really excited to get some really like top line cool stuff.
For the two weapons, kind of once they were selected which reprints they were, there was a lot of digging into what swords from the games would best represent them, and kind of align to the mechanics. So we also wanted to spread them out across a couple of games, and the newer ones of Origins and Odyssey have more options for swords. There's not a ton of super cool swords in some of the earlier games. So the Sword of Light and Shadow, I believe, is the sort of, I'm going to say this, I think it's the Sword of Damocles. It's like the main one that Deimos has throughout the game. It's kind of like this very powerful weapon that he uses, and sort of represents as well like the I'd say the conflict that he has within him. And then the Sword of Feast and Famine is one of the legendary swords from Assassin's Creed Origins. This one, I believe, is the Viper's Tooth. And it has some like poison effects to it as well that just kind of really set well with the black and green aspect of the lands and the discard aspects of this Feast and Famine.
Yeah, and we see all of those have borderless treatments as well, which is very cool. Speaking of very cool and borderless and all those kinds of pretty things, Lauren, we do have one scene in Assassin's Creed. So we're going to show that full scene. So this is the Rome Vista scene. So Lauren, talk about the creation of this and how we landed on this gorgeous piece.
So one of the things that happens in every Assassin's Creed game is the synchronize moment at the sort of the top of each of the fast travel points. As a player who really likes finding fast travel points in games, this is genuinely one of my favorite parts of like across all of the Assassin's Creed series. So what we wanted in the scene is to get that feeling when you are at the top of this high tower and you hit the synchronize button, and then the entire camera pans around you and the birds are flying and you're sort of seeing your assassin and you're seeing the entire setting sort of spread out before you of this game world that you're going to be experiencing, and really kind of have that vastness which you can't fully evoke on a single card. And so to be able to spread that out across multiple cards to really get that sense of immersion within the setting.
Yeah, and Lauren, just to confirm, so we've done scenes before in sets. This is the only scene in this set, correct?
Yes. And so we really wanted to lean into something that was like iconic across multiple games, which is that moment of synchronizing.
Yep, and then you jump into the haystack, which phases you out.
Or you miss it, which happens to me sometimes.
It can, yeah.
It's fine.
We've seen a couple reprints so far, but there are also a number of reprints that are just thematically just really on point. So, Corey, we're gonna look at a couple of these. I love each of these for different reasons, but talk a little bit about how you selected the reprints, like, murder.
Yeah, I mean, we only had so many slots for new cards that when we were selecting reprints, we thought it'd be really fun to just like pick a bunch of quintessential removal spells, kill spells and magic, and just start depicting certain assassinations throughout the games that maybe we didn't have enough time to emphasize among the new cards. So we'll have murder, and there's like a slew of other removal spells actually throughout the games and the reprints, which I think is super, super fun.
I had a lot of fun
and of
picking
course,
iconic murders. Just like, who's the cool people that dies?
Right. This is a great
and of course,
collaboration between us.
Lauren mentioned earlier that she was a big fan of the conspiracies in the set, and you know what? We paid that off a little bit.
Yeah, there's certain cards like Conspiracy. Yeah, exactly. We're like, what would be so funny to have as a reprint? Conspiracy. It's the a lot of the point of the setting is that so many things are happening behind the shadows of history. So we thought this was a slam dunk.
And the last reprint we're going to look at here, just again, really on point. Also the bundle promo, but how could you not?
Yeah, it's exactly that. Like, how can you not have Royal Assassin, quintessential Magic the Gathering assassin? Also, kind of a miserable card in a draft set. So, hey, we're not a draft set. Let's print Royal Assassin in our set.
Moving along, there is one new mechanic in the set. Now, we did already reveal it during the first look, so you may already be familiar with Freerunning. But let's take a look at a card called Eagle Vision. If you didn't catch my pun earlier, this is what it's from. Talk, Corey, a bit about what Freerunning is.
Yeah, I mean, so throughout the games, there's a huge emphasis on movements And, whether it's stealth or it's like parkouring up walls or swinging around, or in this case, Eagle Vision is representing, you're hiding on a roof and you're kind of using an ability to, see specific stuff, like hidden stuff in the world. And so there's a lot of movement and traversal and kind of exploration that's going on. And so we wanted a mechanic that we could put on a lot of action moments that you are doing throughout the game that would kind of build a through line of like, hey, this is the moment where you're doing this move while you're running on these roofs or while you're jumping across these buildings or whatnot. So we're using free running as that kind of analog for actions you're doing when you're kind of on the go in a sense. And free running essentially is a cost reduction mechanic. You're going to be able to cast this if your assassin or your commander dealt combat damage to a player this turn, which is kind of our analog towards if my assassin is attacking and it's getting through and it's connecting to my opponent, that feels like I'm on the go, I'm being acrobatic, I'm moving around. Assassin's a pretty narrow card type, so we were interested in opening that up a little bit in terms of synergy, trying to figure out what are other ways that this can be relevant past assassins. I think Commander's a really interesting slice. It obviously only approaches one format, the Commander format, and maybe its derivatives. But it's kind of the idea that your commander is your main character. And in these games, you're playing as a main character. So there's some sort of harmony there of like when an assassin, if you're playing very assassin heavy, or when my main character is being acrobatic, being evasive, etc., they can pull off these moves with more ease that can give them benefits while being acrobatic.
Yeah, and Aymar, what I love about, so we're going to show off about 4 cards in this, not about, we're going to show off exactly 4 cards in this section, is we've taken magic mechanics and we've matched them to game mechanics. So Eagle Vision is a mechanic in the Assassin's Creed game, and it's how you gather some information, complete quests, do various things. Let's take a look at another in-game mechanic representation, which is petty larceny. So talk a bit about about stealing stuff from people in the games, Aymar.
Yeah, it's not something that is carry on every single game, but it's kind of a thing for a lot of at least the early game. And the idea was always that the assassins would be more on the side of like the unknown, on the outcast, and so they tend to get alive from the thief guilds, the burglars, the courtesans, and it has been the case since the very beginning because they are acting in the shadow. They don't want to be seen, and currently assassinating people is not really well perceived by the authority. So most of the time they had to hide themselves and hide in the shadow and lurk in the shadow. So lots of our assassins have been trained by thief and have the ability to steal from almost anyone, in fact, in the game. And that can bring you to many different things, from stealing gold to getting money information to stealing useful items that you'll be able to use later on to craft elements or to use by yourself. So it's a huge part of the fantasy of being there and trying to remain, and that's one of the motto of the franchise, trying to remain hidden in plain sight. So the whole idea is that you're not always on the rooftop or on the shadow. You're walking in the street among other people while doing your petty larceny and everything.
Yeah, and including hiding in plain sight, you might want to, and he's going to say the thing, become anonymous, which is our next preview card. Corey, tell us about designing against this game mechanic of hiding in plain sight.
Yeah, I mean, hiding in plain sight, again, it's like walking through the crowds, being stealthy, not only through rooftops and stuff, but just like, through crowds and stuff and trying to evade suspicion. So Become Anonymous it's an interesting card. We kind of started thinking about the disguise mechanic, and in MKM, there's also the cloak mechanic. And to cloak is essentially to put something into disguise. So you're going to flip something face down, and it's going to become a 2/2 with ward. You can flip it up for its mana cost. So this is kind of a fun card, right? You exile a creature and then 2 cards on top of your library. Then you like shuffle them and then you put them all onto the battlefield. tapped and cloaked. And the idea is like, okay, your creature, which your opponent knew what it was, is now one of 3 face down creatures. They don't know which one is which. They're harder to remove. So I thought this was kind of excellent flavor and an awesome use of the disguise and cloak mechanics to build a card that is pretty literal. You're just blending into a crowd of face down creatures. So super fun, also with amazing art.
Speaking of amazing art, Lauren, this next preview card, Origin of the Hidden Ones. So you talked about the relationship in Assassin's Creed Origins earlier, and we get some really cool Saga art that sort of tells that overall story. So what was it like designing and depicting sagas in this set?
Yeah, the Sagas were a really close collaboration between Corey and I, and the art director. I believe Stephanie Chung art directed all of the Sagas, and they are, again, typically a lot of art cards can really only show that snapshot in time. So Sagas are one of the ways that we have to sort of show a sequence of events, and we wanted to select like important, memorable moments across the franchise, and it felt like the origin of the Assassin's order was a correct one to begin with, and also it has the the second benefit of showing the story specifically of Aya and Bayek, so mechanically really hitting those beats. And then the art, we wanted to be very what I'd say is diegetic, very in-world, this idea that we're leaning into the historical aspect, like this is a story being painted upon the wall, maybe the wall in the tomb of which both of them were buried, that kind of shows the story of their life. And so look out for other sagas in future reveals, that kind of to see the different ways in which we flavored them.
All right. And we are just about out of time, but I want to run through a couple cool things. The Assassin's Creed has a number of products that you can get to express Assassin's Creed in Magic, including, if you're relatively new to Magic, there is a starter set. So there's a starter kit that has 2 face cards. So there's a version of Ezio, Blade of Vengeance there, and Eivor Battle Ready. Again, 2 of the more popular characters in the entire franchise. And also just another version of those characters. If you're fans of Ezio and Eivor and you want to build a deck around them, they've got more versions. And then those come with 2 60-card decks in the starter kit, with 2 deck boxes and a 16-page Learn to Play booklet. So if you're tuning in now and you're a fan of Assassin's Creed, but you're not sure how to play Magic or how to get started, this is a great way to start with your local game store to learn and practice. There are some unique cards in this starter kit. We can take a look at a couple of those. And these all play into the face cards journey. So we've got the Raven Clan War Axe, Escarpment Forces, and Surtur Fiery Jotun. And then we've also got, for the Ezio deck, Achilles Davenport, Auditore Ambush, and Rooftop Bypass. So let's take a look at the available products. If you are into Assassin's Creed and Magic, we've got Beyond Boosters. There is a bundle. We showed the promo for the bundle earlier. There are collector boosters. Reminder that some of the treatments can only be found in collector boosters. You'll want to check out the Collecting Assassin's Creed and Magic the Gathering article going up about right now. Should be up about right now. And then, of course, the starter kit, either for you or to play with your friends. The decks are pretty well balanced against each other, so you can check out any of those. But if you are a big Assassin's Creed fan and that is not enough for you, we do also have 2 secret layer drops coming. Both of these bundles are both of these drops are going to have 5 unique cards. They are going to come in foil at $39.99 or non-foil at $29.99. So here we have Da Vinci's Designs, which is really cool. Lauren, what's going on with the design of this design?
So for these, we really wanted to lean into both the artifact side of the franchise, but finding sort of flavorful Magic the Gathering cards that could be reskinned as cool artifacts and equipment from the games themselves. So like the example of Whisper Silk Cloak, of course, that is the assassin's garb. That is your robe that you slip your hood up and then suddenly no one can see you. And I loved also having the Da Vinci aspect. He's such a prominent character in the three Ezio in Ezio Saga. He's really the one that gives you all of your equipment, and so having this kind of sketchbook, this feeling of these being pages of his notes that you can see, and with the sketches and the small little like quips on the side, was just super fun to work with the art director to really make these cards pop.
And then the second drop, we have Lethal Legends, which reimagines some popular Magic Gathering legends as characters from Assassin's Creed. So, Lauren, talk a little bit about translating these Magic legends into Assassin's Creed characters.
So we wanted both a spread of characters across the Assassin's Creed franchise, and the plus side is a lot of the characters, kind of like we mentioned already with like Edward and Eivor, they sort of have two jobs. They're both assassins, but they're something else. So one of them being a pirate, one of them being a warrior, and that gave us some really good options to explore a lot of different cards within Magic, a lot of legends. So we took kind of the approach of saying like, what characters do we want to have, and what mechanics and what character cards that we already have in Magic that line up really nicely with them. I think my favorite is probably Amunet, the Aya's card as Queen Marchesa. It's a really fun twist on this idea of you becoming the monarch. Like, it's not because you're royalty, it's because she is assassinating the person that's in your way, as well as building up that assassin army and kind of bringing all of them to life. And I do want to give just a big thank you to Aymar and to Ubisoft. When these were in development, the Assassin's Creed Mirage hadn't released yet, but they still gave us access to a lot of materials in order to develop cards and the art for cards like Basim, to actually be able to incorporate that version of the characters into this set. And it was just such a wonderful part of the partnership to be able to express the like most recent version of the characters, even though they hadn't finished their work, so it was definitely an ask on our end.
Fantastic. Well, I will also thank Aymar and everyone at Ubisoft for joining us today for this amazing set. Thank you, Corey. Thank you, Lauren, for joining us and walking through all of the designs and the decisions around making the set really translate to Magic so well. We are going to be in previews today and tomorrow, with the full card image gallery going up Thursday, so definitely tune in for all of that. I'm very excited to see all of this roll out and to see all of your reactions, whether you're an Assassin's Creed fan or a Magic Gathering fan, or like me, a bit of both. I think you're going to find a lot to love in this set. So thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next week.